Hi, this is Amy from the Stamping Tree, here with another Thursday tutorial for the Fantabulous Cricut Challenge blog. Today I'm going to talk about using markers in your Cricut machine. There are two brands that I've worked with, the Cricut markers by Provocraft and the Cricuts by Cricut. This is the old style marker. I know they make a new style of marker. I haven't used it, but I'm sure it probably works pretty much the same way. The important thing is just to follow the directions for your particular marker. Okay, so here's my file in Cricut Craft Room. I've chosen to use the Little Mermaid from Life as a Beach. I've sized her at 4 inches high, and I've made 4 different layers. I use the hide contour buttons to hide, because when Life is a Beach, all the layers are on the same layer. So the tail, the hair, the flower, and the top were all in the same layer. So I hid everything so I could make them different colors in different layers. So here's the rest of there's her hair. Okay. And I've done the second, third, and fourth layers, so we're just going to focus on the first layer. So what I'm going to do, we're on layer 1. I'm going to come over here and push cut. Here we have the load matte screen, and it talks about what kind of material you're using and what depth you need to be at. We're not going to worry about that because we're not cutting yet. First we're going to use the marker. On your Cricut marker, you can see that the settings that you need are on the marker itself. So what they recommend is a speed of 3 and a pressure of 2. So you just want to make sure, I always use the marker first and then do the cutting. So you want to make sure that you change your settings before you use the marker. I've got it set on a speed of 3 already, but it's set on the maximum pressure because I usually use heavy cardstock. So I'm going to turn it down to a pressure of 2. Okay. So now my settings are appropriate. Okay. So I've got my mat loaded up and ready to go. We're going to cut the flesh colored layer here. So I'm going to hit load mat. And then you can see my blade is here. So I'm going to take out the blade, and the way you do that is by twisting your little nut here to the left. Take out the blade, and you're going to put in your marker. And in order to avoid messing up something that you don't want to mess up, you're going to put a piece of paper in here to protect whatever you're using from the marker. Going to get it in there and screw the nut to the right. Okay, so now we're ready to quote-unquote cut, but what we're really going to do is draw with the marker. So we're going to push the cut button, and we check our settings again just to make sure. And push cut. Okay, so it's finished, the marker part is finished, and if that were a blade and we were all through cutting, ordinarily now we would push unload mat, but we're not going to do that. We don't want to move the mat, we don't want to move the machine, we don't want to move the file. So we're going to go ahead and take our marker out, put the cap back on, and put the blade back in. So you don't want to move the blade carriage, but most of all you don't want to unload the mat. Now, because I'm using heavy cardstock, I've got to change my blade settings again. I'm going to leave it on a speed of 3, but I'm going to turn it all the way up. The pressure is on max. Okay, now you can Now you can see that the Cricut Craft Room file is automatically moved to the second layer. But I don't want to do that. I want to go back and recut and redo the first layer. So I'm going to go over here, hopefully, and switch it back to that. And I'm going to push cut, but before I do that, I'm just going to make sure one more time that my settings are correct. Okay, my settings are still on max pressure and a speed of 3. So I'm going to go ahead and push cut. Okay, we can go ahead and unload the mat because we have cut out, we've used the marker and we've cut it. So I'm going to go ahead and push unload mat. And there you have it. So, and there's our little mermaid, and you can see that the marker has outlined her features very nicely. I suppose in theory you wouldn't have to outline everything. You could hide the contours on the things that aren't going to show because you're going to cover them up with other pieces. There's her tail. And I cut off the top of her hair just a little bit. I think it'll still work though. I used a brown marker on her hair. Yeah. I just think using markers on some cuts just adds a whole lot, and it's particularly good with Life as a Beach and Old West because those things don't have a lot of layers. Typically they only have 1 or 2 layers. And so this just adds a lot of definition. Flower kind of separated. And then here's her little top so she won't be naked. And there's your little mermaid. And I didn't cut out the center of the flower. I thought instead I'd use some liquid pearls. I'll put a big drop of liquid pearl in the center there. Oops, I smeared it. Oh well. That kind of gives you an idea of how to use markers. There are 4 or 5 different sets of Cricut markers, I think 4 different color sets, and these are the ones that I used in addition to the light pink. These are the ones I used in addition to the light pink. Okay, now I'm going to show you a few other things that you can do with markers. This is using the Cricut gel pens, and you can see it makes a much finer line than the Cricut marker. And so sometimes it's kind of hard to tell when you cut it out, but it's really good for backgrounds. And they make sparkly ones. This is the holder that you need to order when you order the Cricut markers. And you can see it looks a lot like the blade housing. And you just take the top off the pen and you stick it in and it sucks it up. It has a magnet in here. Then it fits in the machine just like the blade or like one of the Cricut markers. There's a little indentation here. Put it in like that. Each package of markers comes with instructions that tell you the settings that you need. And so on here, it's the reverse of the Cricut marker. The pressure needs to be 3 and the speed needs to be 2 for the Cricut markers. So I thought I could make a little card with this background and the little mittens and hat that I made that I showed you last week. Maybe put like warm winter wishes along the bottom or something like that. Another thing that you can do, and this is good for teachers or anybody with kids, is you can make coloring pages. So this is just a piece of printer paper, and I used a black Cricut marker, and I set the scene up on my Gypsy, but you could use Cricut Craft Room as well. Put in all the elements that I wanted at the sizes I wanted, and then just pushed cut and with the marker settings, and it just made a coloring page. And then if you have a whole bunch of kids that you want to give this to, you could just run it through a copy machine. Okay, so the takeaway things here for markers, any markers, to do a marker and a cut, are to use the appropriate settings, and don't forget to change the settings between the marker and the blade, and to not unload your mat between using the marker and using the blade, because you want that blade to go in the exact same place where you put the marker. Okay, that's it for today. Thanks for stopping by Fantabulous Cricut for another Thursday tutorial. See you next week.